I never imagined that announcing my pregnancy would open the floodgates to chaos that would spiral so far out of control it would tear apart relationships, shatter trust, and eventually put someone behind bars. But that is exactly what happened. For 7 years, I had built a marriage that I cherished, a marriage with Harry, the man who had not only stolen my heart, but had also stood by me through trials and triumphs. Our love had been tested many times, but never in a way like this. Never against someone who should have been family, someone who should have been supportive, but instead seemed determined to poison everything good in our lives. That person was Kayla, my sister-in-law, Harry's only sister, who had somehow turned every occasion, every celebration, every quiet moment into an opportunity to criticize, humiliate, or sabotage me. When I first met Kayla, I honestly thought she was sweet. She smiled warmly, she was welcoming, she laughed easily. For a while I believed we could become close, even friends. But time has a cruel way of stripping away masks, and slowly the truth revealed itself. Kayla was manipulative, negative, and cunning. She carried an energy that darkened every room she entered, an energy I had to learn how to survive. I tried for years to be on her good side, forcing myself to smile through her sharp remarks, trying to offer kindness in the hope she would change, but nothing I did was ever enough. Harry told me that even before I came into the picture, his sister had always interfered in his love life. When he was 17, he had dated one of Kayla's closest friends. He admitted to me later that he never really wanted that relationship, but had felt pressured, cornered, as though Kayla had orchestrated it behind the scenes. When he finally broke it off, Kayla was furious, and years later she tried again, insisting that he should date another one of her friends. At 23, Harry was already his own man and had no interest in living according to his sister's wishes, so he told her no, and she cried to their parents as if she had suffered some great betrayal. His parents, to their credit, did not indulge her whining, but that rejection festered inside her. By the time Harry and I met, she was already predisposed to dislike me, not because of who I was, but because I represented independence, choice, and freedom for her brother, things she wanted to control. Her disapproval showed in subtle ways at first. Whenever I was around, she brought up Harry's ex-girlfriends with casual remarks, asking if he had spoken to them, commenting on how well they were doing, planting seeds of doubt and discomfort. Harry saw it too and told her to stop, but she never listened. Her remarks became sharper once our relationship grew serious. She accused me of being jealous, mocked me in front of others, and often acted as though she knew what was best for Harry while I was some unwanted outsider. The most painful part was that she never even tried to disguise it. At dinners with his parents, she would casually invite one of his exes, pretending it was just a coincidence, pretending she had bumped into them and felt obliged to bring them along. Imagine sitting across the table from a woman who had dated your fiancé and your sister-in-law smirking as though she had scored a victory over you. For years I tolerated it because I loved Harry and I did not want to create rifts within his family. I believed if I stayed polite and patient she might soften. But instead her behavior escalated, especially when Harry and I got engaged. That night was supposed to be one of the happiest of my life. His parents celebrated with joy. Friends raised their glasses, but Kayla sat quietly, lips pressed into a thin line, until suddenly she stood up, excused herself, and stormed out. Later she called Harry in tears, raging that she should have been the first to know, that as his sister she had earned that right. She even sent me a message afterwards that felt more like a threat than a congratulation, warning me how I should treat her brother because she had always been the only woman in his life. I stared at that message for a long time before deciding not to respond. Silence was my answer, and I knew that silence would enrage her even more. From then on she ignored me deliberately at gatherings, but at the same time insisted on involving herself in every detail of our wedding preparations. She criticized my choices openly, mocked the colors I picked, and sneered at the centerpieces I had chosen. I tried to bear it, but one afternoon when she overheard me discussing the flowers with my future mother-in-law, she began laughing at me, saying my choices were classless and tasteless. That was it. I snapped. I told her she was no longer invited to our wedding, screamed that I had had enough of her cruelty, and that I would not allow her to ruin another moment for me. The shock on her face was unforgettable, as though no one had ever dared to speak back to her. She gasped, her lips trembling, but instead of apologizing, she ran to Harry and complained, demanding he control me, demanding he take her side. Harry, to his everlasting credit, told her that he supported me completely. If she wanted to be at the wedding, she had to apologize sincerely. Days later, I received a message from her that was clearly written through gritted teeth, an apology without an ounce of sincerity. I left it unread. I was exhausted with wedding planning and had no more energy to waste on her endless drama. She came to the wedding in the end, though she made sure to draw all attention to herself by arriving in a floor-length black gown with a veil, as if she were mourning her brother's loss to me. She whispered to guests that she was heartbroken. She moved from table to table spreading her bitterness, and finally my in-laws had enough and asked her to leave. It was humiliating for me, but also revealing for everyone else who saw just how deep her resentment ran. From that day, I kept my distance. I made it clear she was not welcome around our son when he was born. I wanted to shield him from her toxicity. Harry supported me, his parents supported me, and for a time Kayla stayed away. When she suffered a miscarriage a few years later, I felt a pang of pity. We loosened our boundaries slightly, allowed her to see our little boy, thinking maybe grief had changed her, softened her. For a brief while she seemed kinder, calmer, but it was only a facade. Slowly, the manipulation returned. She would spend hours complaining about her life, blaming everyone else for her failures, never admitting fault, always painting herself as the victim. When she got married to Jamie, we were surprised not to be invited. She claimed she feared I would sabotage her wedding the way she had mine, a laughable accusation since I had done nothing to her. Harry and his parents were furious and decided not to fund her wedding. That broke her. She turned her anger on me again, blaming me for destroying her relationship with her parents. She eventually apologized again, her words dripping with sweetness, and I forgave her for the sake of peace. Her wedding went smoothly, but within months she was at our door complaining about Jamie, blaming him for their struggles, invading our home with her bitterness once. The days after finding that box were some of the hardest of my life. Even though the police assured us they were investigating and promised patrol cars would pass our street at night, the feeling of safety had vanished. Every creak of the house, every shadow on the lawn, every unfamiliar car parked down the block sent my nerves spiraling. I was heavily pregnant now, and stress was the last thing I needed, yet stress was the only thing I had. Harry tried to be strong, but I could see the toll it was taking on him. He barely slept, pacing the house at night, checking locks twice, sometimes 3 times. He kept his phone in his hand constantly, waiting for updates from the police. I could see the exhaustion carving lines into his face, the fire of anger and fear in his eyes whenever Kayla's name was mentioned. He wanted to protect me, to protect our unborn child, but how do you protect someone from a shadow that refuses to go away? 2 weeks later, things escalated again. It was a Saturday evening, quiet, almost peaceful. Harry and I had just finished dinner and were watching a movie when the phone rang. The number was blocked. Against my better judgment, I answered. At first there was silence, then a low, rasping laugh that made my skin crawl. And then her voice. She whispered that she knew it was almost time for the baby, that she couldn't wait to meet her nephew or niece, that she would be there whether I wanted it or not. The morning I decided to share the news of my pregnancy was one of those mornings where the air itself seemed lighter, where every sound carried music and every breath felt like a gift. I had been planning a special dinner for Harry, something intimate, something that would etch itself into our memories as one of the happiest evenings of our lives. I imagined the look on his face when he would realize he was going to be a father again, the sparkle in his eyes, the way his laughter would fill the room. For weeks I carried the secret inside me, a glowing treasure I could not wait to reveal. When the evening finally came, Harry was more tired than usual from work, but the moment he walked through the door and saw the table set with candles and his favorite meal, his fatigue seemed to melt away. He kissed me softly, thanked me, and sat down, smiling in that quiet way that made me fall in love with him all over again. We talked and laughed, reminisced about our early years together, and when dessert came I slid a small box across the table. Inside was not jewelry, not a watch, but a tiny pair of baby shoes. Harry opened the box, froze, then looked at me with wide eyes. His voice cracked when he asked if this meant what he thought it meant. I nodded, tears already filling my eyes. His chair scraped loudly as he rushed around the table to pull me into his arms. His laughter was wild, unrestrained, the laughter of a man who felt blessed beyond measure. We spent the rest of the night wrapped in joy, making plans, imagining names, picturing our little boy becoming a big brother. For a brief time it felt like nothing could touch us. But happiness has a way of drawing envy, and the darker the heart, the more bitter the envy becomes. We decided to share the news with his parents first. They cried with happiness, hugging us, blessing us, their excitement contagious. Our son clapped his hands though he didn't fully understand, and in that room filled with love I almost forgot Kayla existed. But she was family, and whether we wanted it or not, she had to be told. Harry hesitated. He suggested waiting, but I insisted we be honest. So the next weekend at a family dinner we announced it together. His parents beamed, Harry squeezed my hand, and then, like a shadow sliding across sunlight, Kayla's face darkened. She did not clap. She did not smile. Instead, she crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair as though someone had just insulted her. Her first words were not congratulations. They were a sneer disguised as a joke, something about how fast we had moved, about whether Harry was even ready for another child, about how some people used children as a way to trap men. The laughter that followed was hollow, biting, and everyone at the table knew it was aimed at me. Harry's mother scolded her softly, told her she should be happy for us, but Kayla rolled her eyes and muttered that she was only being realistic. From that night the harassment began anew, worse than before. She would call Harry late at night pretending to check on him, but slipping questions about me into the conversation. She asked if he was sure I was faithful, if he had thought about the possibility that the baby might not be his. She spread these poisonous doubts in whispers, little seeds meant to sprout into suspicion. Harry told me everything, every vile suggestion, and while his loyalty comforted me, the fact that his own sister could say such things cut deep. She showed up at our house uninvited, sometimes bringing small gifts for our son, pretending she was trying to bond, but then making remarks about how tired I looked, how pregnancy did not suit me, how I should be careful because men often strayed when their wives were pregnant. Her words were daggers wrapped in silk. I wanted to slam the door in her face, but Harry begged me to stay calm, to not give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. At one point, she even accused me directly in front of his parents. We had gathered for Sunday lunch when she leaned across the table and said she had seen me at the gym talking to a man she claimed looked too friendly, too intimate. I nearly choked on my food. Harry immediately defended me, explaining that he knew exactly who she meant, that it was a trainer I had spoken to about equipment, nothing more. Kayla's smirk in that moment was infuriating. She wanted me angry. She wanted me defensive. She thrived on conflict. But the worst was yet to come. One evening when Harry was at work and I was home alone with our son, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Kayla stood there, her face pale, her hands trembling as if she had been crying. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She claimed Jamie, her husband, had been cruel to her, that she had nowhere else to go. I did not trust her, but she looked so desperate I could not turn her away. She sat on my couch, sobbing, telling me story after story of how miserable her marriage was, how unappreciated she felt, how she envied me for having Harry, for having parents who supported me. It was during that rant that she said something that chilled me. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You stole everything from me. You stole my brother. You stole my parents. You stole the life I was supposed to have." Her voice was flat, almost empty, and for a moment I felt fear run through me. She smiled after saying it, but it was not a smile of kindness. It was the smile of someone who had revealed a dark truth and enjoyed the discomfort it caused. After she left, I told Harry everything. He was furious. He called her and told her she was no longer welcome in our home, that she had crossed every line, that from now on she was to keep her distance from us. She screamed at him, called me names, accused me of poisoning him against her. He hung up on her. For a week we heard nothing. Then the messages began. Emails, texts, voicemails. Some were apologetic, dripping with fake regret. Others were vicious, filled with threats, accusing me of ruining her life, promising that I would regret ever crossing her. I blocked her, but she found other ways to reach out, creating new numbers, new accounts. It felt like harassment on a level I had never imagined. The stress took a toll. I struggled to sleep, my appetite faltered, and Harry grew more protective, insisting I not go anywhere alone. We considered contacting the police, but his parents begged us to try once more to handle it within the family. They hoped she would calm down, that time would heal her bitterness. I wanted to believe them, but something in my gut told me this was only the... After weeks of harassment and poisonous rumors, I thought Kayla might have run out of fuel for her madness. I convinced myself that maybe she had exhausted her rage, maybe the venom she spit had finally burned her own throat raw. For a short time the silence almost felt like peace, a fragile layer of glass stretched over the cracks in our lives. But glass always breaks. One Friday evening Harry and I decided to host a small gathering at our home. Just close friends, laughter, a chance to breathe after the storm of gossip Kayla had stirred. I wanted to surround myself with positivity, to remind myself that not everyone believed her lies. As guests arrived, the house filled with warmth, the kind of joy that makes walls echo with life. I cooked, Harry poured drinks, and our son darted around, squealing with happiness at the attention he got from everyone. For a few hours I felt normal again. But normal was something Kayla could not tolerate. While music played and conversations flowed, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I ignored it at first, focusing on my guests, but the buzzing repeated, again and again, until my curiosity cracked. Slipping away to the kitchen, I checked the screen. The message contained a photo of me from earlier that day, taken as I left the grocery store. The caption said only 3 words. I am watching. My breath caught. My hand shook. I looked around the kitchen window half expecting to see her face pressed against the glass. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the voices in the living room. I showed Harry and his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. He stormed outside, scanning the street, checking every corner, but of course she was nowhere to be found. Kayla thrived on shadows. She wanted us rattled, wanted us to know she could invade our lives anytime she wished. Harry insisted on calling the police. A report was filed, but without direct threats they could do little more than note it down. It was infuriating. She could torment us in plain sight and the law seemed powerless to act. Days later Harry received an invitation to a corporate event hosted by one of his partners. It was important for his work, something he could not decline. I agreed to accompany him despite my anxiety. We arrived at the event dressed carefully, determined to project strength, to show no cracks. But the moment we stepped into the ballroom, my stomach dropped. Across the room, standing with a smug expression and a glass of champagne, was Kayla. She approached as though nothing had ever happened, as though she had not spread lies, as though she had not stalked me. Smiling sweetly, she congratulated us on the pregnancy loud enough for nearby ears to hear, then leaned close to Harry and whispered something that made his face pale. Later he told me she had whispered that she would never allow this child to replace her place in his heart. That she would make sure the world knew the truth about me. Her obsession had taken on a new shape. It was no longer about jealousy or rivalry. It was about possession. She did not want Harry's happiness. She wanted to own his misery. The weeks that followed became a blur of paranoia. Strange cars parked near our home for hours. Phone calls with silence on the other end. Packages left at the doorstep with unsettling notes inside. One contained a baby doll with its head severed. Another had a photograph of Harry and me, slashed across the middle with red ink. Harry's parents finally confronted her, furious, demanding she explain herself, demanding she leave us alone. She denied everything, sobbing, turning the story into how I had framed her, how I was destroying the family bond. She begged them to believe her, but this time the evidence was too strong, the pattern too clear. For the first time, they did not rush to her defense. That betrayal seemed to shatter something inside her. Not long after, Harry's company held a large celebration, a formal party to honor a successful project. Harry was hesitant to take me, knowing Kayla might appear, but I insisted. I wanted to face her, to show her she could not scare me into hiding. The night started beautifully, the room glittering with lights, music carrying laughter across the dance floor. Harry and I were finally enjoying ourselves when chaos erupted. Kayla had entered, dressed elegantly, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on us. She walked straight to the stage, grabbed the microphone from the announcer, and with a twisted smile began to speak. She accused me of trapping Harry with pregnancy. She claimed I had lovers, that Harry was a fool for trusting me, that the baby I carried was not his. The room gasped, whispers spread like wildfire, and I felt heat rush to my face as though the walls themselves were closing in. Harry leapt onto the stage, wrenched the microphone from her hands, and shouted for security. His voice trembled with fury as he declared every word she spoke was a lie, that his sister had lost her mind. Guests watched in stunned silence as Kayla screamed, trying to snatch the microphone back, her face contorted with rage. Security dragged her out, kicking, clawing, shouting that she would ruin us, that no one would believe our perfect little lie. The humiliation she intended for me landed squarely on her. People whispered about her obsession, about her cruelty. Her reputation crumbled that night. But her rage did not fade. If anything, it deepened, solidified into something more dangerous. 2 weeks later, we received a call from the police. Kayla had been arrested after causing a scene at a local bar. She had been drunk, ranting loudly about how her brother had abandoned her, how his wife had stolen everything. When strangers laughed at her slurred words, she attacked one of them, clawing at his face until staff pulled her away. Her arrest should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a warning. Because I knew Kayla too well. Jail would not break her. It would harden her. And when she came back, she would come back with vengeance. That night as I lay awake, my hand resting protectively on my stomach, I realized something chilling. Kayla did not just hate me. She did not just want to destroy my marriage. She wanted to destroy me, body and soul. And she would not stop until one of us was gone. Kayla's arrest gave us temporary peace. For the first time in months, I was able to breathe without constantly looking over my shoulder. Harry and I started believing that maybe this nightmare was finally over. We tried to focus on our baby, on preparing the nursery, on imagining a life without chaos. But deep down I knew better. Kayla was not the kind of person who accepted defeat. Jail was only a pause for her, a moment to sharpen her hatred into something far more dangerous. When she was released weeks later, the silence was almost worse than her screams. No messages, no strange packages, no sudden appearances. Just a heavy silence that felt like the air before a storm. I kept expecting the thunder to break, waiting for lightning to strike, living with the tension crawling under my skin every single day. Harry's parents cut her off completely. They told her she was no longer welcome at family gatherings, that they had supported her for far too long only to watch her destroy everything around her. This rejection from them seemed to snap something inside her. She had always seen herself as the center of the family, the one who controlled Harry, the one their parents relied on. To be abandoned by them must have felt like betrayal of the highest order. And so she turned her fury on me with renewed obsession. One evening, as I walked out of the doctor's office after a routine pregnancy checkup, I noticed a car parked across the street. The driver's face was hidden beneath a hood, but something about the way the car seemed to idle, the way the figure inside never looked away, made my blood run cold. I told myself it was paranoia, that not every shadow belonged to Kayla, but when I mentioned it to Harry, he stiffened immediately. He insisted on changing our routines, taking different routes home, installing more cameras around the house. Weeks passed like this, with Kayla hovering at the edges of our lives like a phantom. Then one night, everything exploded. Harry had invited several colleagues over for a dinner party, an important evening for his career. We decorated the dining room, prepared food, and welcomed guests. The atmosphere was warm and buzzing, laughter filling the room. I almost allowed myself to feel safe again. Almost. Halfway through dinner, the front door slammed open. Conversations froze mid-sentence as Kayla stormed inside, her hair wild, her eyes blazing with madness. She carried a glass bottle in her hand, sloshing dark liquid onto the floor as she staggered forward. The smell hit me instantly. Alcohol. She was drunk, trembling with fury, her voice breaking as she shouted across the room. She accused me of stealing her brother, of manipulating the entire family against her, of carrying a child that would ruin Harry's life. Guests sat frozen in shock as her words grew darker, her tone hysterical. Then, in one horrifying motion, she smashed the bottle against the table, shards scattering across the floor, liquid spilling everywhere. Harry was on his feet instantly, shouting for her to stop, trying to block her from getting closer to me. Our guests scrambled away, some calling for the police, others too stunned to move. Kayla's eyes locked on me, and I swear there was something almost inhuman in her expression, a twisted satisfaction as though she had been waiting for this moment. Before she could lunge, two of Harry's colleagues restrained her, holding her back as she screamed and thrashed. Her voice cracked with rage as she shouted that I was a liar, that I had poisoned her brother's mind, that she would make sure no one ever believed me again. The police arrived minutes later, dragging her out while she continued to shriek curses, her face red with fury, spittle flying as she screamed she would destroy us all. The party ended in chaos, our guests shaken, the dining room a mess of broken glass and spilled liquor. Harry held me close that night, his body trembling with a mixture of rage and fear. He swore he would never let her near me again, never allow her another chance to hurt me or our child. But his voice shook as he said it, and I could feel the terror beneath his anger. Kayla was charged with trespassing, property damage, and public intoxication. This time the judge was not lenient. She was sentenced to probation, ordered to attend counseling, and placed under strict restrictions. It should have been enough. It should have ended there. But Kayla had lost too much, and losing made her dangerous. She lost her reputation, her family's support, her freedom. And she blamed every piece of it on me. Months passed, the pregnancy progressing, my belly growing rounder as I prepared for motherhood. Harry and I tried to shield ourselves with normalcy, buying baby clothes, painting the nursery, taking long walks to calm our nerves. But Kayla's shadow never really left. We heard rumors of her spiraling further, of her drinking heavily, of her lashing out at old friends. Every whisper felt like a reminder that she was still out there, still watching. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, the house quiet, the world outside blanketed in darkness. Harry had fallen asleep beside me, his arm draped protectively across my waist. I stirred awake at a faint sound, a creak on the porch, the kind of sound that should have been harmless, but sent ice down my spine. Slowly I slipped from bed, padding softly to the front window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek outside. And there she was. Kayla stood at the edge of the porch, her face half hidden in shadow, her eyes glinting with something sharp and terrifying. In her hands she clutched a small box. For a long moment she just stood there, unmoving, staring directly at the window as though she knew I was watching. Then she set the box down on the porch, straightened, and walked into the darkness without a sound. My heart hammered in my chest as I opened the door, staring at the box with dread. Harry woke to the sound of me crying his name and rushed to my side. Together we lifted the lid, and what we saw made my stomach turn. Inside lay a collection of photographs, all of me, taken without my knowledge. At the grocery store. At the gym. Walking in the park. In every photo Kayla had scribbled words across my face. Words like liar, whore, destroyer. But the last photo chilled me the most. It was a picture of me asleep in our bedroom, the angle unmistakably from our own window. Beneath it in jagged red ink were the words you cannot hide. I collapsed against Harry, trembling, my mind spinning with terror. This was no longer just obsession. This was a declaration. Kayla was telling us that no matter what we did, she would always find us. That night we went to the police again, this time armed with undeniable proof of her stalking. They promised an investigation, promised protection, but as I lay in bed with Harry holding me tight, I knew promises could only do so much. Kayla was unraveling, piece by piece, and when someone with nothing left to lose decides to take revenge, there is no telling how far they will go. And deep inside, I knew the storm had only just begun. The days after finding that box were some of the hardest of my life. Even though the police assured us they were investigating and promised patrol cars would pass our street at night, the feeling of safety had vanished. Every creak of the house, every shadow on the lawn, every unfamiliar car parked down the block sent my nerves spiraling. I was heavily pregnant now, and stress was the last thing I needed, yet stress was the only thing I had. Harry tried to be strong, but I could see the toll it was taking on him. He barely slept, pacing the house at night, checking locks twice, sometimes 3 times. He kept his phone in his hand constantly, waiting for updates from the police. I could see the exhaustion carving lines into his face, the fire of anger and fear in his eyes whenever Kayla's name was mentioned. He wanted to protect me, to protect our unborn child, but how do you protect someone from a shadow that refuses to go away? 2 weeks later, things escalated again. It was a Saturday evening, quiet, almost peaceful. Harry and I had just finished dinner and were watching a movie when the phone rang. The number was blocked. Against my better judgment, I answered. At first there was silence, then a low, rasping laugh that made my skin crawl. And then her voice. She whispered that she knew it was almost time for the baby, that she couldn't wait to meet her nephew or niece, that she would be there whether I wanted it or not. I froze, unable to speak, while Harry grabbed the phone from me. He shouted into the receiver, his voice shaking with rage, demanding she leave us alone. But by then the line had gone dead. The police traced the call, but told us it was made from a prepaid phone, untraceable beyond the vague area it pinged from. They promised to step up patrols, but the reality was clear. Kayla was still out there, still watching, still waiting. Harry's parents were devastated when they heard about the call. His mother cried, saying she couldn't believe the daughter she raised had turned into someone capable of such cruelty. His father grew quiet, grim, saying he wished he had cut her off years ago before she reached this point. They begged us to consider moving, to leave the city for somewhere Kayla couldn't find us, but we both knew it was impossible. I was weeks away from giving birth. We couldn't pack up our lives and run. Not yet. Then, one night, the storm broke. It was just after midnight when the sound of shattering glass ripped me from sleep. Harry leapt from the bed, rushing toward the noise. My heart pounded as I heard footsteps pounding down the hallway. I staggered to my feet, clutching my belly, and made it to the bedroom door just as Harry collided with her. Kayla. Her face was wild, her eyes bloodshot, her hands gripping a shard of glass from the broken window she had smashed to get in. She screamed Harry's name, screamed that he had betrayed her, that I had poisoned him, that the baby I carried didn't deserve to live. Harry wrestled with her, shouting for me to get back, to call the police. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it, dialing with trembling fingers. Kayla fought like a woman possessed, her screams piercing, her movements frantic and violent. She slashed with the shard of glass, barely missing Harry's face, the blade glinting under the dim hallway light. I was frozen in terror, watching the man I loved battle his own sister, watching madness and obsession explode into violence right in front of me. It felt like something out of a nightmare, a scene I couldn't wake from. Finally, with a surge of strength, Harry managed to pin her against the wall, holding her wrists down as she thrashed and spat, her face twisted with rage. The sound of sirens grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Police stormed inside, pulling Kayla from Harry's grip, dragging her down the hallway as she screamed and kicked. She was arrested on the spot. Breaking and entering. Assault with a deadly weapon. Stalking. Harassment. The charges piled up like bricks in a wall, finally closing in around her. This time there was no probation, no counseling, no second chances. She was denied bail, and the look in her eyes as they took her away will haunt me forever. She didn't look defeated. She looked victorious, as if by breaking into our home, by confronting us in our sanctuary, she had proved something. As if she had shown us that we would never truly escape her. The following weeks were a blur. Police officers came in and out, asking questions, gathering evidence. Lawyers called, family members cried, and the media caught wind of the story. Headlines about the sister who tried to destroy her brother's life filled newspapers and websites, strangers online debating our pain as if it were a movie. Through it all, Harry stayed by my side, refusing to leave me alone even for a moment. His anger burned like a fire, but beneath it was guilt. He blamed himself for not cutting her out sooner, for not protecting me better, for letting things go this far. I told him again and again that it wasn't his fault, that Kayla's madness was not his burden to carry, but he couldn't let go of the weight. Then, one morning, it finally happened. My water broke. Labor was long and exhausting, hours of pain and fear mixing with the overwhelming hope that soon I would hold our child in my arms. Harry was beside me through it all, gripping my hand, whispering encouragement, his face a mask of determination and love. And when our baby's cry finally filled the room, all the darkness seemed to lift for just a moment. We named him Ethan. Holding Ethan in my arms for the first time, I felt a kind of love I had never known before. Fierce, protective, unshakable. I looked at Harry, tears streaming down his face, and I knew that no matter what Kayla tried, no matter what she had already done, we had something she could never touch. We had love. We had family. We had hope. But even in that moment of joy, I knew the story wasn't over. Kayla was still out there, locked away but waiting. And the scars she had left on our lives would never fully heal. Still, as I watched Ethan's tiny chest rise and fall, as Harry kissed my forehead and whispered that we were safe, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the storm had finally passed. The weeks after Ethan's birth should have been filled with nothing but peace, soft blankets, late-night feedings, and the quiet wonder of watching a new life unfold. But instead, our home remained heavy with tension. While I rocked Ethan to sleep, Harry sat by the window, scrolling through his phone, reading updates from lawyers and police, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed. Even in our happiest moment, Kayla's ghost clung to us, reminding us that nothing would be simple. The court proceedings began sooner than we expected. Kayla had been formally charged with aggravated assault, breaking and entering, criminal harassment, and violating a restraining order. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was mentally unstable, that what she needed was treatment, not punishment. But the prosecution was relentless. They laid out every message she had sent, every social media post dripping with venom, every witness statement from family members who had watched her obsession grow. I sat in the courtroom, Ethan nestled in my arms, listening to them speak about my life as if it were a case study. Harry held my hand tightly, his knuckles white. Across the room, Kayla sat in an orange jumpsuit, her hair tangled, her face pale, but her eyes still burning. She didn't look at the judge. She didn't look at the jury. She looked only at us. And when her gaze fell on Ethan, who whimpered softly in my arms, her lips curved into the faintest smile. It was not the smile of a broken woman. It was the smile of someone who believed she had already won. The trial stretched for weeks. Witness after witness was called. Harry's parents testified, their voices breaking as they admitted they had seen Kayla's cruelty for years, but had failed to stop it. Harry told the court everything: the manipulation, the lies, the stalking, the way she had tried to poison every moment of our marriage. And then it was my turn. Standing there, facing a room full of strangers, I told them about the years of torment. About the way Kayla had mocked me, belittled me, accused me, tried to destroy me. About the night she broke into our home, her hands dripping with glass and fury, screaming that my baby didn't deserve to live. My voice shook, tears streaming down my face, but I refused to look away from her. For the first time, I wanted her to see me, to understand that I wasn't afraid anymore. Kayla's defense crumbled. The jury didn't take long to deliberate. Guilty. On all counts. The judge's voice was firm, almost cold, as he sentenced her to 10 years in prison with no chance of parole for the first 6. The courtroom was silent, the air heavy, until Kayla finally broke. She stood, screaming, cursing Harry, cursing me, spitting words like venom, her body straining against the guards who held her back. She shouted that this wasn't over, that family couldn't be destroyed by a piece of paper, that she would come back for what was hers. They dragged her out, her screams echoing in the walls, and when the doors slammed shut behind her, a strange kind of silence fell. A silence that felt like the end of a long, brutal war. For the first time in years, I breathed. Life didn't become perfect overnight. Trauma doesn't vanish with a gavel strike. Nights were still restless. Sometimes I woke from dreams of shattered glass and burning eyes, clutching Ethan to my chest until my heartbeat slowed. Sometimes Harry's anger boiled over, memories of his sister's betrayal clawing at him, leaving him pacing the house in silence. But slowly, with time, the cracks began to heal. Harry's parents tried to reach out to Kayla, sending letters, offering therapy, praying she would change. But none of their letters were answered. For them, it was like grieving a child who wasn't dead but had chosen destruction. The weight aged them, but they poured their love into Ethan, treating him as if he were the light that could heal the wounds left behind. As Ethan grew, so did our strength. His first smile, his first laugh, his first steps, each one a small victory against the darkness Kayla had tried to drag us into. Harry often said Ethan saved him, gave him a reason to keep moving forward, a reason to believe that not all family ties were curses. A year passed. Then 2. The shadows of Kayla's obsession began to fade, not gone but no longer ruling us. We built new routines, new traditions, filling our lives with love so thick that there was no space for her poison. But sometimes, late at night, I thought of her. Of the way her eyes had burned even as the judge read her sentence. Of the smile she had given when she saw Ethan. And I knew deep down that when her time in prison ended, she would try again. The difference was, next time, I would be ready. Because this was no longer the story of a woman destroyed by her sister-in-law's hatred. This was the story of survival. Of a marriage that endured storms meant to shatter it. Of parents who chose to protect their child no matter the cost. Of a family built not on blood, but on resilience. Kayla may have been my husband's sister, but she would never be part of my family again. The day she broke into our home, screaming that my baby didn't deserve to live, was the day she lost any claim to us forever. And as I held Ethan close, feeling his warmth, his heartbeat steady against mine, I knew the truth that Kayla never could. Love is stronger than hate.